Linda and I met in college, and I was taking astronomy, and the astronomy class had like a balcony where you could stand and look out over the campus before you went into class. So we'd stand out there in the sunlight and just relax a little bit. And there she came walking along with her moccasins and her poncho, and this blonde curly hair down to her back, and whoa, she is something else. I don't know what, it just struck me. And I remember that moment. I still picture you exactly like that, that moment. And that was the first time I saw her.
So I met Richard, the first time I met Richard was in geology class. He was sitting behind me, had black curly hair and this black mustache. And I do remember that. I remember looking behind and seeing this fellow who was staring at me all the time.
Just by chance, we had a class together. So, and I'm not sure whether I maneuvered it or what happened, but she was sitting right in front of me. She was very attractive to me. It seemed like she walked in her own little sphere. She was very individual.
This was an interesting fellow, and this dark hair was really prominent. He wasn't doing as well as I was doing in the class, so we had an opportunity to do some tutoring. And this was our first get-together. He's living on top of the mountain in Santa Cruz and at a horse ranch. And for some reason, he didn't have his truck. And the first time we got together, on the pretense of getting together over geology, I needed to pick up the truck. The mountain trip was a switchback. So that's where you have a very narrow road with the precipice, and you have to do these switchbacks where you turn completely almost going the opposite way, and then you go back up and all the way traveling almost, like a 90-degree. So typical Richard fashion. That was our first get together.
I took her home after our evening of study. She had on her little red blouse with the puffy sleeves, and I said, well, let's go down to the beach. Nice evening in Santa Cruz, so we went down and climbed down the rocks and went for a little walk, and there we had our first kiss. Actually, I was doing quite well in geology. I probably made up that I needed help, We became serious, and we were spending a lot of time together, and we actually...
Then we started living together.
I talked her into moving into my house. We were both in college, and then I graduated, and I went to Europe, and didn't come back. I decided to stay in Europe. So we were communicating just in letters, and I was just missing her, and realized that there was something in my life that was an emptiness, and so I proposed in a letter.
And your proposal was either we get married or that's it. I remember really clearly thinking that the one thing about Richard was Richard always made me laugh. I knew that he really loved me, and he always made me laugh, and that was really important to me, that I had that kind of relationship where we would have that kingship, and I had that with him. I wrote him, and I said, yes, I'll come to Spain, we'll get married, and that's what we did. We've been together since...
36 years.
He pushes himself out. He'll climb every mountain. He'll open gates that say "Do not enter." I'm not that kind of person. I mean, literally. And so he was always pushing me to do things that were out of my normal range. And so I think that for me that was unique. Plus, here I am, a kid from New York. I was born in Brooklyn, and I'm out with first I meet him. He's living up at this mountaintop, and it's a horse ranch. And I go up there, and we have these horses that are beck and call, and I never rode a horse. And we were out riding the mountains in Santa Cruz, this is the Wild West for me, and we're riding bareback. And I felt like I was in a movie. I just couldn't believe it. It was total freedom. Everything, of course, for me, everything about California, but Richard was the one who brought all that to me, you know, all these experiences, and doing these things that were more out of my normal range.
When I was introduced to Linda, you know, and then met her larger family, you know, you have the Brancatos and the Milazos and the Montaltos and the Andrianas and you know, it was like literally like stepping into a Fellini movie when we went back for the holidays. It was wild, and I loved it. It opened up another world for me too.
Stubbornness, I think. We're both stubborn, and we're gonna make this work, by golly.
I have so much respect for her and admiration, you know, and she's great.
You know, both being artistic people, we really support one another in that. Like he said, you know, I supported his musical search, and he's always been supportive of me as an artist and believed in what I did and my vision. So I think as artists, it's a good combination. The best thing is the same thing that brought us together originally, was his sense of humor. I find him, I was saying, sometimes I say to his family, I still laugh. I laugh at the same jokes he's told since the same things that he did when I first met him. I'm still laughing at those.
She's unpredictable, so you never know what's going to happen with Linda. You know, it's just totally unpredictable. She's really special.
What we had, which was really important for us before we had Matthew, and it just happened that way because of circumstances, we had years of traveling, of living together, of doing things as two adults living together, figuring out who we are, how we relate, before Matthew came along. Matthew is, I think he impacts our relationship in every way, in every positive way. It makes it so much more meaningful to have this person who is an extension of both of us. He's really a sensitive, bright boy. He brings both of us a lot of pleasure, and I just think we were so blessed to have him. I had 6 pregnancies before that. So we had a lot of emotional upheaval, which was hard, kind of drew us apart and drew us together. It did both things. But the biggest thing was that we had all that time to figure out who we were as individuals and as a couple before he came along.
You have to be really sensitive to the other person and their needs. You have to be willing to compromise and be happy to compromise, you know.
Everybody's creative in some way or another. I mean, I think we're all creative beings. I think finding that creativity inside of you is important, because then you can share that with somebody else, and that can make you more attractive to the other person. So I think ultimately it's knowing yourself, is kind of getting a better handle on who you are, and as a creative being, creating a new entity in this relationship. So when you approach it as a creative endeavor, your goal may be fulfilled in a broader way.